Great pleasure to welcome you here tonight. Before we dive into it, let me actually just see a quick show of hands. For how many of you is this the first time in the National Museum of American History? Wow, so you're repeat visitors. I'm glad to see that. That's really exciting, actually. So I have the pleasure of welcoming you to the museum and telling you a little bit about the program before we dive into it. What you're in right here is a new themed wing around invention innovation. So the museum's in a rejuvenation and renovation process. This whole wing opened in 2015 with new exhibits about the place of invention, Spark Lab, our hands-on invention space. To my left, your right, the American Enterprise exhibition, Object Project behind you about how the design of everyday objects impacts our lives, and others. And so the idea is that visitors here get instilled and imbued with the history of technology, but also creativity and innovation. On the second floor, just less than a year ago, we opened major new exhibits on voting, on the expansion of the franchise of voting, on how we became us, on how immigration and movement across the country shaped the American identity. And we're in the process now of developing new exhibits for the third floor. They'll be on entertainment, sports, and American culture. And so what you see in that is really a set of thematic and conceptual exhibits, but ones that are really meant to excite people and to spark conversations and dialogue around what it means to be an American. I'm very fortunate to be the director of the Lemelson Center, and we think about that around the idea of engaging, educating, and empowering people. So the center was created 22 years ago thanks to the support of Jerome Lemelson, a very prolific, independent American inventor, one that many of you will recognize in that he started by inventing toys and games. And it was really the openness of that industry to an independent inventor, not one with a big university backing, not a large corporation. The openness of the industry to license products in and to bring them to market that helped get that inventor going. And he came to the museum and brought to us a mission that we've expanded since of inspiring inventiveness in children and adults. And so our Spark Lab, which I'll encourage you to visit after tonight's panel, is very much that kind of hands-on invention space. And so we've been studying the history of inventors. We build archives. We do oral history. I had a great conversation earlier tonight thinking about who the key toy and game inventors were of the past 50 years, how to capture and record some of their perspectives. And we bring that then into what we do in exhibits and programming. So with that, it's really my pleasure to introduce Stephen Pasurb. The President and Chief Executive of the United States Toy Association, Steve represents businesses involved in creating and bringing toys, games, and youth entertainment products to children of all ages. Founded 102 years ago, and I don't want to take any wind out of his sails, but he told me earlier tonight, one of the key concerns at that moment was kids are losing creativity, they're not playing enough, they're not finding the time and place to play, right? That's something we worry about very much today. So that association today includes over 950 toy and game companies, really making them one of the 3 or 4 largest associations in the country, and certainly the most interesting one. He previously served 14 years as president and CEO of the Partnership for Drug-Free Kids, and before that worked in Maryland state government. Steve?
Thank you, Arthur. See, the more things change, the more things stay the same. Yes, that was the minutes from the first board meeting of the association. They were lamenting the fast pace of life and how everyone is just going in too many places and too many directions, and our kids are getting lost in the shuffle. So it's important. Play is one of those universal truths of children's lives. So we're really happy that you're here tonight. This is our Genius of Play panel, fostering innovation and creativity through play. And I think as an organization, it took us 102 years, but you've arrived once you're at the Smithsonian. So this is really wonderful. We appreciate Arthur, the amazing team at the Smithsonian, for hosting us here tonight. They have been absolutely fantastic through the process. We hope tonight we're going to have a lively discussion and a playful discussion and really share a lot of good information for all of you for coming, from the toy companies who came down from New York and from other places, from parents and play professionals. We really, really appreciate your being here. This is part of our Genius of Play initiative initiative to spread the joy, the love, the message of play. It's an advocacy and public education campaign that we're doing, not just to build awareness about all the benefits of play, which have now been proven through science, but really to change the public's attitudes about play and what play means both in a child's life and, frankly, in our adult lives. As many of you know, that mission of the Genius of Play is really core to one of the things that we're doing as an association. Play should be a part of every child's life, and we need to make that a part of every child's life by helping parents understand if they care about math, if they care about science, if they care about creativity and inventiveness in their child, they need to encourage their child to play. So we really look forward to hearing from our expert panelists. They're going to share not only their career experiences, but really what play meant for them during their lives and how play helped shape their lives. Things like critical thinking, problem solving, and active imagination, and probably a whole lot of things we haven't thought about. So it's my hope that we all leave here tonight with really a deeper understanding of the role and value of play and how that is used to propel innovation and product development and all those things we take terribly serious in our adult lives. It really begins when we're children, and that magic of play and inventiveness and creativity in our young lives. After the panel, we'd love for you to get some inspiration by visiting thegeniusofplay.org. This is the commercial part of my presentation. thegeniusofplay.org. It's really a fantastic resource. Play information, the science demystified about why it's important for a child to play. And if you'd like to learn more about the Toy Association, my second commercial, come to our website and subscribe for Toy News Tuesday, and you'll hear a lot about what's going on in the toy industry, not just at the Genius of Play, but a lot of other of our initiatives. But we know that when you leave here tonight, we think you're going to have a very different perspective of play and what that means and the importance in a child's life. So again, thanks for being here. Let me turn it back over to Arthur, and let's get the show on the road.
All right, thank you very much. With that, I'm really delighted to introduce my colleague, Monica Smith, who's going to be moderating the panel. Monica is the head of exhibitions and interpretation for the Lemelson Center. She's been the project director and curator on several of our major exhibitions, including the current Places of Invention and previously Invention at Play. She's published widely in museum studies and the history of technology, including work on the history of the electric guitar. Bit of a theme there. And she's the former editor of the Journal of Museum Education. Monica.
All right, well, thank you everyone so much for coming, and thank you for that nice introduction, Arthur. So I'm really thrilled to introduce you to these four wonderful people. I've had the chance to talk with them on the phone a bit about this and chat tonight. I think you'll find them playful and inventive as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce each of them individually and ask them to give a very pithy definition of play from their perspective, and then we'll get into the conversation. So I'm going to go in order of next to me. So I'm going to start with Jerry Robinson. She's the Vice President of Early Childhood Initiatives at the Boston Children's Museum. She offers over 45 years of experience in teaching and consulting in the field of early childhood education. She's the developer of the museum's Play Space exhibition, which is one of the earliest prototypes for family learning in museums, if you didn't know that. Founder of the Boston Cultural Collaborative for Early Learning, and co-founder of both Families First Parenting and Countdown to Kindergarten. Jerry confirmed her love for all things playful when at age 10, she earned her Girl Scout Dabbler's badge. Love of community and a champion for school readiness keeps her busy as a member of several community boards and a member of the Boston School Committee. And her love and passion for multi-ethnic dolls and afternoon tea keep her playfully busy planning doll activities and tea parties for the 50 junior members of the Black Gold Doll Club. So with that, Jerry, tell us, when someone asks you what's the definition of play, what do you say?
For me, play is joy. Doing things that are what you love to do. So there's got to be love, wonder in there, but it's got to bring you joy. And I think play changes over the periods of your lifetime. So I'd also would say, for young children, play is the work and how they live their lives. We'll talk more about that as we go on.
Great, great. All right, and so next to her is James McClure. He's a senior hardware engineer at Google, who I met almost 22 years ago, I think. He was one of our first Innovative Lives presenters, in fact, so he's back 2 decades later. As he's also I love this, a recovering professor from Rice University. He is in what he calls the engineer construction business, first by building engineers directly, and now by building things that build more engineers. He is a lifelong member of the Bring Your Toys to Work Club, as he has today, you'll see, I think, and has managed to engage in very serious play with model trains, Lego bricks, Nerf blasters, mountain bikes, honeybees, and cardboard sculpture, all in a 100% professional context, of course. So, James, with that, how would you define play?
So I've got to quote or paraphrase the great philosopher Sheryl Crow. If it makes you happy, I would sing, but you don't want to hear that. It can't be, well, anything but play. So there we go.
Great, thank you. So next to him is our teacher, Molly James, who works with some of the most creative and playful people on the planet, kindergartners.
Yay.
She is passionate about seeing and helping others to see the profound impact play and creativity have on thinking, learning, and life. Laughter, positivity, deep thinking, and conversations surround her. She works to empower her students with the skills, mindsets, and beliefs that enable them to problem find and problem solve. She's certain her students will one day create innovation that will change the world for the better. So with that, tell us what you'd say about play.
Well, it was interesting. We were looking at what the definition of play is in the dictionary, and I'd like to change it. For me, play is a way of interacting with the world that is both fun and powerful. And that the thing that having it be fun, which I think some people make it be frivolous because it's fun, that's actually what makes it powerful, because it allows our brains to be open and to explore possibility, entertain new ideas, learn, and take risks, and learn that failing isn't the end, but it's really the beginning to start a new game, stronger and smarter. So for me, that's what it is.
That's great. And last but not least, we have Vivek Gupta, who is co-founder and CEO of Wonder Workshop. He drives the Wonder Workshop vision, strategy, and growth as it brings products into the hands of children around the world. Wonder Workshop's robots, Dash, Dot, and Q, I think you have to tell us about those names, are used in over 20,000 elementary schools around the world to help kids learn how to code. Wonder Workshop's 2017 robotics competition brought together 30,000 participants from 63 countries. And I thought this was interesting, drawing equal participation from boys and girls, which is great. Before Wonder Workshop, Vivek founded Jambool, which was acquired by Google in 2010, where he joined to head consumer payments. Previously, he led the payments and web services groups at Amazon. So with that, Vivek, tell us, how would you define play if asked?
I think in my view, and I think a lot of us, what we do at Wonder Workshops is anything that we see open-ended and unconstrained in the hands of a child, we see that as play. Wherever they want to take it, as long as you don't put constraints on where they want to take it, results in play in their hands. And tools can be anything. They could be toys, they could be robots, they could be books, they could be nothing. They could be out in the garden, but that's all play.
That's great. So I want to touch on something all of you have talked a little bit about, obviously, children and play. So talk about yourselves. What did you like to play with as kids, and how did that influence what you do now? I don't know who wants to start. I'll look at any of you.
I can start.
Go ahead.
I'm assuming 3 of us grew in the US. I grew in India, so which is very different. I didn't grow up with a lot of toys. My play, every afternoon used to be out in the sun and playing playing cricket, which I don't know how many of you know the game, but we played a lot of that. And then the other was board games. We somehow or the other we had board games, especially Scrabble. So that's what we played a lot. And I did not know of a company called Lego until I came to the US, which was now I find it surprising. I did not know that.
Wow. I mean, I can't even imagine my childhood without Lego. So that's my answer to your question is very much Lego. Cardboard was important too. Remote control cars, model trains, all these things that let you learn hands-on crafting, mechanical design, electronics. Video games were great. You could actually write video games when I was young. They weren't these mega multi-billion-dollar efforts they are today. So those were all the toys I loved.
I'm going to put you on the spot. I remember you telling a story and mentioned at play about a cardboard box and some air conditioning you invented for it as a kid. Do you remember this story from a refrigerator box?
I do. So my neighbor got a refrigerator, and they threw out the box, and I just couldn't believe it. Anyone throw out something as wonderful as a refrigerator box. So I asked my mother, can we keep this? Can we have this box? And she said, yeah, I think we can have it. And it got hot in the box, turns out, in the house. And the solution was to get a bunch of ice and a grate and a pan to collect the water, and then a fan that would then blow the air over the ice to put some cool air into the cardboard box. Now that I'm older, I understand HVAC a little better. That's not. You need to get the hot air out. You need a flow. There's counter current. There's a bunch of things that I could do a much better job on that.
So I don't know if you know, but I mean, just to rip on that a little bit, so in India and lots of other countries of the world, they made that into a whole industry where you sell this thing they call it coolers. They have a fan, and behind this, water's flowing down,
Yeah.
these mesh of hay, and that's what cools the house.
Wow.
It's a whole industry.
That's evaporative cooling done low tech and high tech at the same time.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
That's great. So what about you, Molly? What do you?
For me, similarly to you, it was being able to run around outside, be challenged by my brother who's 3 years older, and supported by my parents. One of the funniest things was climbing a tree with all the boys who were 3 years older than me, and I was able to climb up it, but not down it. So they had to go and get my mother to talk me out of the tree, but it really taught me a lot now that I use now as an adult. And then the making of things, just paper and cardboard boxes and everything. And what could you do? What could you just create with the things, which definitely impacts me now as a teacher.
What about you, Jerry?
So I was an only child in a household, multi-generational household, parents and an aunt and a grandfather. And I think my play came from each of them. So my mother was at home, domestic. I loved to learn to sew, and I loved to play dolls. So I mimicked her all week long. She washed the clothes, I washed the dolls' clothes, and all of those kinds of things. My aunt was a puzzler, and so I'd go downstairs and do puzzles with her. And games, board games, those things, dominoes, great domino player. But my grandfather was retired from the railroad and was a cabinet maker. So I learned how to use tools, learned how to, mahogany, could go out with him to choose wood, et cetera. So I thought I got a chance to, based on the adults, got a chance to do a lot of different things.
And let's talk about that a little bit, about adults and mentoring for kids. So, I mean, most inventors I talk to mention some sort of key person in their life or key people who really encourage their play and encourage them to do things like take the refrigerator box or take apart stuff. So do any of you want to talk about some experience with some mentor that really you think shaped who you've become today?
I mean,
Go ahead.
there's several I can think over the course of my life. Early on, obviously, mom and dad are always there. Cousin, however, he was a year and a half older than me, still is. It's amazing. So it's amazing how that works. But he always was first to the computer. He has computers. I now had to get a computer. He was first to electronics, so I had to get into electronics. He got a nice Mongoose. I had to get a BMX bike. So he really was. Dad was an engineer of training, so he could give me volts and amps and learn how to solder and all these things, that technical. Mom was very much the chief operations officer, very much. Once I exhausted the local library, she would then got me to the next city's library and then got a card somehow to the university, local university, Hofstra, I grew up in Long Island, library, which was a neat hat trick for her to do. So she was always finding resources for me. But that triad as a young person was somebody to fall in line behind the old wise master of electronics and mechanical building stuff, and then the person who's actually just laying down the tracks that the train can keep on going.
Yeah, and I would think mine is similar to yours as well. Parents who were very supportive. My mother, who was very creative, didn't care how much of a mess you made as long as at some point you cleaned it up. And an older brother who, from when I was a child until now as an adult, was always kind of that, and when I was younger, that person, the step ahead. He played an instrument. I need to play an instrument. He knew how to read. I know how to read. I need to know how to read. He fenced. I need to know how to fence. And now, as we're adults, to now be more walking with each other in the creative process and the learning process, and just being able to really bounce ideas off of each other still. I think the mentorship for me doesn't end as a child, but it may change a little bit, but still that idea of having somebody, like you said, to lay the tracks, but also to go on the tracks with you at the same time is super important.
And I think very similarly for me, I would say it was my dad. For us, it was not as much in kind of play per se, but he was a big believer in having free time. like time when you're not doing anything. For example, I remember I graduated from in India, it was grade 10, and I was going to grade 11, and we had 3 months of vacation in the middle, and I had a lot of peer pressure where all of my friends were studying for this. They joined these tuitions so that they could actually go compete in this exam 2 years down the road. And all of a sudden, all my friends are gone. Like, who do I play with? So I was telling my dad I need to go study, and he made it a point that these 3 months you're not going to go to school. You just, it doesn't matter you do nothing, but you're not going to go to school. And that was one thing that's, I think, was carried with me.
I think for me it was community teachers. Grew up, again, in a strong household with, strong church and other community activities. And it was those teachers in those programs, whether it was the Girl Scout leader, or the music teacher or the church organist, they all introduced us to lots of different kinds of things. And there was a lot of skill that they wanted you to develop. They wanted you to be good at something. So I think sometimes it was on that road of finding a passion, beginning to develop a skill, that you now had something that you could take and do more with. So I always enjoyed music. I wasn't a great musician, but I grew a love of music by the exposure. And then as a teacher decided that, making sure kids had opportunities to do those things came out of my own experiences.
Well, based on these experiences, I mean, we're sort of preaching to the choir here, right? Like, the people who are here probably believe that play is important. But I'm sure there's lots of people out there, teachers and parents that you may meet, or just, who say, well, my kid needs to study. They need to take the test. They need to do the, so this is the way, the path, right? So what do you say to a parent or educator, to some person who's skeptical about the importance of play? How do you convince them that they're wrong?
It's about the balance. That, the museum, we often try to catch parents being happy and gleeful. And the issue is that we said, there's no child that walks into Children's Museum and can't figure out what to do there. And often you start seeing their adults change. And when people want to say it's not important, thinking, well, what makes you feel happy and good when you see your child's face light up, or you see them really going back and doing something over and over again to get better at it? That's play. So play can be fun, but play can also be serious. But we talk often a lot about playful learning, because there is learning in play. And sometimes if you add the learning part to the play, and people can see the exploration and all of those things are really leading to something, they'll step back from it. I think people just don't want to think of it as something that's frivolous. But even in frivolousness, there often can be lots of great learning.
And to be able to invite them, for me, to be able to invite them into the classroom to experience opportunities where the kids are playing, but they're really doing incredible work as well. And to share that with them, and then have that time that you could debrief to say, did you notice this? And they were learning this, or they were having to negotiate this, or figure this other thing out. And to have conversations with those skeptical people who, for me, sometimes are parents, to say, look, this is the brain research, if you want me to show you some of the things, so that you can see it's not just me, crazy Miss James, making the supermarket in our classroom, but that there's actual research out there that supports it. And also then to have that conversation, not only when are your children happy, but when were you happy? And when was it easiest for you to learn? When somebody was cracking the whip, or when it was fun, when you played a game? The woman who came with me, we played a dice game, Farkle, on the way down. And I said, if you ask the child to just keep pointing out what the dice things are, keep adding that up, they'd be like, I'm going to have to poke myself in the eye with a pencil. But you could play that game for hours, and you're constantly
Doing those skills.
doing math. You're learning math skills. You're learning perseverance. You're, negotiating, making decisions. Should I roll, or should I back off? So for me, it's those things.
I think for what we've seen is learning is actually fun. Like I've, both personally, and I see it with my kids as well, if you keep a child fairly challenged, they're actually having fun in that process. So for us, message often to parents is, playing does not mean they're not learning. And I think it just, and if a child is actually not engaged, they're less likely to learn. So, and play is a good way to engage them. So we need to meet the kids where they're at. And lastly, I think one of the other things is to show what kids produce at the end of it is a great way to kind of turn non-believers into believers, where, like there are times when a kid will spend an hour playing with the robots, and at the end of it, they'll come back to the parents and show them what they did. And I've seen literally parents not believe, like, this is not possible. Like, my kid did not do this. But it did. And that's, what turns them into believers.
As a professor, I took great joy. If I knew a parent was coming to class, I would try to show out a little bit that day and have a lecture, if I could time it, have lectures that would have, off-the-wall content. This is Bring Your Mountain Bike to Work Day, where I actually would bring my mountain bike to work, and we look at the physics of the bunny hop and suspension and all the gear ratios on the mountain bike, or at model trains, or all the students in my class had a little robot that they would work with. So that was something that most parents hadn't seen before. But trying to make the point that, yes, here's your fresh person in my class, first-year college student, and we're doing some off-the-wall stuff, but they're learning engineering. And ideally, they're going to figure out what kind of engineering they like to do and what they don't like to do. The class covered, it was introduction to engineering in general, electrical, mechanical, computer science, and systems engineering, to see people, that really, really sucked. I don't want to do that ever again. But this over here wasn't so bad. So that was the goal of that course.
So what would you say, we had a little conversation about this on the phone, I thought it was really interesting, about sort of that magic age of a child to really support and encourage play, or end up discouraging it. Is there some magic age that you think there is?
I was having a debate with one of you two on the phone.
It was me, I think.
Yeah.
We were saying younger, yes.
So I
I'd be happy to continue it. No.
apparently, I stuck my flag in the ground at 12, because 12 was the age where I could, it was still unconstrained by any kind of rational notion of what I could and couldn't do, but had enough technical chops and enough skills to build really fun Lego or cardboard, or I was programming at age 12, so I could write some software. I mean, I could do a lot of fun stuff. So that's. I try to always stay in touch with my inner 12-year-old when I'm doing something and see, what would that James do? I don't think he'd be doing this. We should go do this instead.
And I said that I thought you really had to engage your 4 or 5-year-old now. Perhaps when we were growing up, I probably would have agreed with you, the 12-year-old. But I think now there's a different pressure. I have parents who come to me in kindergarten talking about, what college is my child going to get into?
Blue.
And they don't get that play is going to help them. So the kids start to learn by the time they're in kindergarten. We're writing things. So I say, this is what I'd like you to do. And they ask me a question. Well, can I write about this? And I'm like, well, what did I tell you? They told me I could write about this. I said, but and they say, but can I write about anything I want? As long as it's answering whatever the question is. And what they're showing me is they understand that there are rules, and I might not be telling them the truth. And having fun and playing, that is not what they're supposed to do. So for me, we start, to your point of discouraging, they start getting discouraged quite early, and maybe not even discouraged, they learn that the adults in their life do not want them to play, do not see the value of play. So for me, I think it's younger.
Yeah, that's terrible.
At least now. Yes, I agree. That's why I'm teaching kindergarten.
I 100% am with you, which is I think you should start early and right at 5 or 6, where there is pressure in like schools, and I live in Palo Alto, and those of you who don't know, it's like probably one of the they're very competitive set of high schools and kids. So, and that pressure builds up at a very young age at times, and it comes often from parents, not from anyone else. So kind of emphasizing the value of play, I think is critical. And the other thing also we've seen, for example, you do robotics in a big way, and my parent to a dad, to a girl, and I want her to love any of that things. Like it should not feel growing up that it's not for her. And what we found is that they build those conceptions, those preconceived notions as early as in elementary schools. So I think encouraging them to have that sense, that freedom, that this is for them, they can actually go do this. So we should do that. I believe we should do that at a young age, which is starting in kindergarten.
Yeah. Today was Talk, Read, Play Day in Boston. And what we have is rhyming flash mobs. So all of the child care centers go out to libraries, to the T-stops with their kids and their signs. And the kids are doing finger plays and singing games, et cetera. And all the adults are talking to all the adults they see going by about the importance of talk, reading, and playing to children under the age of 5. Because we've got to start it there. And we're saying, and so it's the grandmothers that you pass the street who said, oh yes, play is important, et cetera. So we're trying to get community to become engaged and to use that language, but also to see that these kids are having a great time with the games that they're playing or the songs and what they're learning, but they're learning. But you've got to keep that play in there.
So since we have a mix of people who work in some spectrum of the informal to formal education here, how do we get more play into formal education in a meaningful way, or is it possible? I mean, you're fortunate that you have a play-based kindergarten, but do you see, like, can you keep pushing that in upper grades, or how does that work?
I wouldn't say that I have a play-based kindergarten, just FYI.
All right.
The mission statement of my school, well, there is creativity in the mission statement. We are considered a rigorous and academically rigorous school from junior pre-K through 12th grade. So even in the situation that I am, which is awesome, you still have to kind of be creative. And I think, you know, it's teachers having to be reflective, first of all, to understand what the value of play is and how to communicate that, to be able to say, this is what they did. You know, we made the thing out of the box, and look what they learned. You know, so I think to a certain extent it falls on the teachers, on the educators, to be reflective, but also to create that climate, even if it's in my own classroom. Like you have all that awesomeness of all the schools doing it, but maybe it's only my classroom, but to understand how powerful each one of us is, whether it's in your family or it's in my classroom, just the way that I interact with my students in treating them as 5-year-old colleagues, you know, as being a resource for them, as having their ideas be important, that, whether it's play-based for the rest of the time, doesn't matter as much as just let's be responsible for our own venue, if that makes sense. I'm not sure that answered the question, but I felt like saying.
I think play can definitely be woven into education. So there's a story that I want to share, which is there's a town called Reggio Emilia in Italy. And when I was starting the workshop, I visited that town to kind of learn about the philosophy. And if you haven't, it's a wonderful town, wonderful set of schools, and it's all over the world now, that philosophy. So they had one school where, not just in preschools, they were trying to take into elementary schools. And they showed this one example where in a math class, they gave this open-ended challenge to kids, not even a challenge, like a question to kids where, how do you measure the surface area of a blackboard, large blackboard? And eventually by the end of, I don't know how many hours or what the kids did, they eventually used the A4 paper as the unit of measurement. And they figured out the surface area of the blackboard in the size of how many papers does it take. And that's a really good from first principles, figuring out what measurement is, what surface area is, and so on. And it's all play-based, open-ended, children being involved. So there are avenues where you can integrate play and give kids the tools to figure answers out by themselves and learn a lot more, I think, in that approach.
Yeah. If I could just say one other thing, and then I'll be quiet.
No.
Is in math, one of the things we're doing now with the kindergartners is problem solve and problem create. So I gave them a problem to solve, and then I asked them to give me a problem to solve. So they have to create one, and they have to. It's word. You have to do it as a word, not just 3 + 2. What is that? And this one little girl came up and she had written out, and she wrote out, I had 2 cats, and one ran away. Now I understood what she was asking me. But my response to her was, you must be so sad. To your point, that you didn't actually ask me a problem, you told me a story, and that's fabulous. And that, like you said, letting them figure it out. They took little pieces of paper. How awesome is that? Because then they'll be able to do something later. And she brought me another one that made me say, you must be so happy. But finally she got one that she actually asked the question, and you know, that's a way, like you said, to bring it in, so.
Shifting the curriculum. So
You're on the school committee. so
I'm on
you
the
must
school
be on this all
committee,
the way.
and I said I'm on the school committee because I am the champion for early childhood, and we have a very strong play-based curriculum. We're an urban district, we're Boston. So we have an urban district, we have lots of English language learners, lots of children who struggle. But we've invested a lot, both in the educators, but more importantly, in the curriculum. And the curriculum brings play in many appropriate ways. So for example, right now, the kids are doing their construction unit. And their construction unit starts each year with a letter from the mayor to the kindergarten children saying, we understand that you are about to embark on this unit on construction. And my question to you is, what can you create that would make Boston a fairer place to live? So if you are for, fair is something they understand. But this project goes over 3 months, and it starts with conversations, and people come back with their ideas, and they're making lists of all of these ideas. Kids are coming up with words, they're writing, they're doing every single skill that you would want them to do, but with a purpose. And then they create models. The models go to City Hall. The mayor comes to see the models. The models go to the district offices. The superintendent, everybody comes to see the models. Kindergartners get up and present their projects. And we see the future mayor sitting right there because they're very strong. And these are not trivial ideas. Of course, you get, the playgrounds, et cetera. But the one idea that got me was they wanted to create an ATM room. And if you're worthy, it lets you in, you hold up your hands, and it gives you the amount of money you need. So we said our kindergartners are social justice warriors. They bring to their thinking, the things that they're living. We have homeless children. They've created places. They wanted to create homeless shelters that had places for pets. Hospitals that were made of glass because it would be easier to clean. And the playground that had special places for parents to put their cell phones so that they could play with their children. But it would let you know if there was an emergency so that you could get it. These are 4- and 5-year-olds. Wow. So, the issue is if you give them an opportunity and support, they will learn and they will change your mind about what's even possible. But if you go into those classrooms while these models are being made, out of all kinds of materials, and and they are talking and they're very serious about it. It's not what you would think. They're not sitting there bored with worksheets. So play can be a wonderful piece for.
I wish I'd gone to school in Boston.
Yeah.
That sounds great.
Come go to kindergarten with us.
Yeah, I got to go back to kindergarten.
I can't follow that. As an engineer who's actively trying to get playful tech out, at some level I have to wake up believing that if I had, when I was younger, better tools, better toys, better parts, that I could build better things and learn more stuff and have more fun. So the project I'm on now at Google is to build, take Google Machine Intelligence and push it not just to the edge of the network, phones and computers, push it past that out into the world. So we're trying to get here's a cardboard voice kit.
We need demos.
Yeah.
Demo, yeah, okay.
We've got toys. We have to have toys.
What time is it?
Oh, we've got time. It's 7:25.
It's 4:25.
I felt.
Where am I?
Your current location is Seattle, Washington.
Which, so the answer is correct. So this is basically, if you know tech, this is a Raspberry Pi, and in here is our little board. That it's not complicated at all. It has a microphone and a speaker on it, and it connects this Raspberry Pi to the Google Assistant, so you can answer questions. But it also gives you back the text of what you said. So now we have the thing that we wanted in the 90s, which is a voice-to-text translator. So I say something, I get back the text. I can throw out the little goofy assistant response. I didn't say that. I can throw out the assistant response and use that text. Make the trains go. I make my trains go. I can say open the door, and the door will open. I can connect it up to anything I want. So open-ended anything. This other one here, if you look at this light on top, it is blue. It turned a little brighter blue. That means it sees a face. And if I smile, So I get yellow. And as we all know from the movie Inside Out, yellow is the color of joy. There we go. So what's going on here is that another Raspberry Pi, so we want to meet makers where they are. On top of that is a vision coprocessor that is interpreting the image it's seeing. It's recognizing a face. It doesn't know who it is, but it knows there's a face there. And then the next level, then it runs it through its image processing to understand, is the face happy or sad? This technology was in our Clips smart camera that we launched a few months ago. And we shamelessly took that and stuck it into a cardboard box and stuck it on the shelves on Target to get it out so people now can take this. If they like the neural network model for recognizing joy, that's great. If they want to recognize 1,000 objects, we have that model. If they want to recognize several hundred species of plants, plants, birds, insects, we've got those models. So we're trying to just expand the space of cool toys that they take machine intelligence and make it as easy as we can. We're not at kindergarten level. I like to think that talented middle school students or high school students for sure can make this stuff go. And we're going to put it out there and see what happens. So.
But if you had acted as a resource for the kindergartners to do the things that maybe they don't have, the kindergartners could do that or something very similar to it.
So,
if you could not do it for them, but just be that resource for the things that they can't use their fingers well enough, or you don't want them to cut their finger off, things like that.
So that's actually why, that's one of the main reasons why I left being a professor, because there wasn't enough of me to do that. I had to somehow teach the teachers. I had to have a bigger lever, bigger knobs. Factories in Shanghai, I needed more tools. I needed more levers to do this. So I went to Google to get bigger tools to get into more kindergartens. And unfortunately, I can't do it personally, though, which is the problem.
I do see a cardboard box theme.
Oh, yeah. No, this was...
Do you have any other cardboard box stories for us?
Cardboard boxes. So, I mean, cardboard boxes are fantastic, right? Because they're everything. They're anything. They're trains, they're cars, they're forts, I had a little tank where I had a little ping pong, I had a cardboard box, and I painted tank treads on the side. And I had another cardboard box on top of it with a periscope made out of an aluminum foil box with 2 mirrors. And again, this is where mom, right, who's got mirrors lying around? Mom makes mirrors lie around the house. And aluminum foil boxes, we had those. So now I've got this periscope, and I can aim it. I've got my ping pong gun in the turret, and I can scoot around and shoot things now, and safely encapsulated in cardboard boxes. And it was fantastic.
So what do you see as some other things besides cardboard boxes and perhaps Legos that you think are really great toys for kids that maybe aren't the typical thing that people would think of? Or what are some of the resources in life that you think are sort of the key toys?
Tools. School tools. I mean, with all of the new maker phenomenon, I mean, when we started back, people were just making things. Now it's maker. And oftentimes what I watch kids get frustrated at is they go to a maker fair or something and they want to do something, but they really don't have the skills. They don't know how tools work. When I taught kindergarten, every classroom had a carpenter's bench. So kids learned how to use hammers, et cetera. We need to make sure kids have open opportunities to learn how to use everything from tape and glue and scissors and all of those things, so that when they get an idea, they have some sense about, well, if I do this and this, I know how to make this stick together, whether I should use a stapler or whether I should be gluing it or taping it, those kinds of things. They need that open-ended exploration when it's not about getting to a product or an end thing, but just something that they can just mess about and learn how to use all of that stuff. So I call it school tools, because then parents take understand it's important.
If you say school, then it's okay?
Yes, school, because we're saying it's just we had a lot of parents that would say to us, not giving him those crayons or whatever. Or when he goes to school at 5, he'll be able to write. He'll magically pick up a pencil and write. And I say, so when he's 16, you will give him your car keys and he will drive out of your thing. Well, wait a minute, no, he needs some skills. We're saying, it's the same kind of skill. So we have a piece in our kindergarten classroom that shows the development of writing, from scribbling all the way to writing, just saying scribbling is just as important part of this as the actual writing. And it's when children are given those opportunities long before they have to utilize those skills, then they're comfortable and confident. Because we're saying the kid who walks into kindergarten who doesn't know how to use a pair of scissors, the achievement gap begins to tick right at that moment.
Look at that.
And so we're trying to say that it's all the experiences, and the younger they can get these things so that they're comfortable with those skills, then they can do all of these other things that we want them to do later.
I see a lot of nodding, yeah.
Yeah, you talk about tools. I remember very clearly, 4th grade Christmas, I wanted for those of a certain age, a G.I. Joe Sky Striker airplane. This was what I wanted, $80 kind of piece of plastic. And Mom looked at this, and this was not going to be in her budget this year or ever. And what I got instead was a toolbox, a literal toolbox with actual, hammers, chisels, screwdrivers, and wrenches were in the toolbox. And I was not a happy camper that particular Christmas. And I left it there, and I kind of walked circles around it for 3 or 4 days. And we got, halfway through the Christmas vacation before I finally opened it up, and there's some wood in there, and there's some instructions. And I started building the stuff in the toolbox. And that was, as you may imagine, fantastic. Far better than the G.I. Joe Sky Striker. I should go buy one on eBay.
I was going to say, I thought you would have bought one already.
Yeah, I still have the toolbox. It's in the garage. It's nice and safe and sound.
And I would agree, the tools, and to your point when you said you don't want the girls to grow up believing that they can't do anything. And for us right now, it's, funny enough, nuts, bolts, and washers, and screwdrivers and wrenches. And there were some girls who knew how to use the wrenches and some who didn't. And I swore the ones who knew it to secrecy for a week, that they couldn't tell their friends, so they could just try and figure it out on the side. And I said, if in a week they can't figure it out, you can tell them. And they love, like there was something that they could put in, taught them how to make holes in cardboard without stabbing themselves with a pencil. But the tools, just the simple tools.
Yeah.
And I think it's because they're real life things,
They're real.
and to
They're real
saw
things.
before I knew that Make Do or one of those things has safety saws. I bring in bread knives, and so to teach them, like, you could cut, and here are the rules. Don't ever put your fingers underneath it. Don't ever put my fingers underneath it. But it's so, like, learning how to rip duct tape. Like to cut duct tape and have to problem solve. If I stick it to the table and pull it out, and all the ways to do it, like that is so, those are the awesome playthings. And we have great games as well, but those things are the things.
Real.
Parents are like, I think my daughter's bringing home washers. Do you have washers? I'm like, yeah, we're playing with washers and all that kind of thing, so.
Can't disagree with that at all. Like, I think I've seen my kids just, come home with, stuff built with tools. And but the only other thing that I would add maybe is, I think we live in a very digital world, and if we can introduce kids to whether, things that we do, which is robots and getting kids to code and do robotics at a young age, but really helping them figure out make sense of the world that they live in. For example, I remember driving out of our driveway, and I opened the door with the remote, and my kids were curious, like, how does that work? Like, how does that button on the car, or do you press this button and the door opened? And that was a kind of sort of a teachable moment. Like, we had been into a long exercise on how these things work and how they interact, and there's actually code running. But the good thing is, at least my 6-year-old daughter understood what code meant, and because she's, I've spent time with her with the robots and so on. So giving them a sense of how that world works, how does a YouTube video play on a phone that's sitting in your hand? How does it show up? Letting that be a place where they can go with curiosity is something else that I would say.
One thing we were talking about a little bit earlier was this issue of making parents feel smart so they feel better able to sort of support their kids in their play. So I thought it would be interesting to have you maybe talk a little bit about that, about how do you, for those who haven't had the advantages of going to some of these, schools or getting those things, how do you help the parents feel like, okay, I can do this for my kid, even if that wasn't my experience?
Giving them a chance to play too. A lot of our workshops, we try to make sure that the parents have a chance to do that work. And in fact, a whole group of folks we're now training are parent leaders. These are folks who are actually, parents who try to bring other parents in. So if you teach them and they feel it's cool, then they can go out and do it together. because we really want them to feel that they can support their children. But if they haven't had, you can't teach what you don't know. And so a lot of the parents haven't had those experiences. A lot of our parents coming from other countries have never done these things themselves. So really making time for them to become comfortable, get acquainted, and also helping them to say, you know what, I don't know, but we can find out. And we find that children's books are the greatest teachers of all, that if you want to learn something, go find a children's book. And so either giving them the real skills or at least the words that, you know, you can be a learner too.
And that, I think, is really important for their kids, don't you? That,
Yes.
you know, even when you're trying to teach children how to read, and they resist so much all the skills, follow with your finger, you know, sound it out. And I truly believe it's because no one in their life who is an adult who they respect
Reads that way.
ever makes a mistake in front of them. Never says that I have to sound out words. Never says, I don't know how to do that. You know how to do it? Could you teach me how to do it? And you know, so I think that that's a great way for them to help their children as well. Make mistakes in front of your kids. Don't be afraid to fail and to say, wow, I messed that thing up, or, you know, that's the way I had to learn to read, as opposed to being a great orator that you think I am now, you know?
Other thoughts about that?
I'm still trying. So I'll forget. So
I can go.
Yeah, it's all right. We don't all have to each have to answer everything.
So one story that I want to share that we were talking about earlier was when we were doing research of, you know, what's a great way to introduce coding robotics to kids at a young age. We did focus groups with parents. And the very popular tool is Lego Robotics, Lego Mindstorms. And we would go talk to parents and say, the parents who bought Lego Mindstorms, brought them home. We would ask them, do you use them? He says, no, we've actually, it's all sitting in the closets. We've actually never played with it. We'd ask them why. And invariably, 100% of those parents said, we brought it out, and we opened the box, and 1,000 pieces came out. And we all got scared. Like, basically, the parents said, I would look stupid in front of my kid because I don't know how to help him. And so we put it back in the box, saying, we'll open another day. And it never opened again. So the hurdle that we had to cross, and with anything we build, is that parents should feel comfortable bringing that to their kids, so they shouldn't feel stupid in front of their kids. That is a part of, you know, how we've approached the design, especially for young kids. Because parents feel a sense of responsibility that I'm bringing this thing to the kids, I should be able to help them if they need my help. So it's important to kind of have parents feel a sense of confidence in some ways to what they're introducing to their kids. And the other thing is, I think, as you mentioned, which is failure needs to be an accepted part of the process. And I think we need to both show that to parents and definitely have kids feel that, you know, there's no wrong answer really. Figure it out, and you'll find the right path eventually. That's a part of what we, you know, have, as we interact with parents and so on, make that as a very vocal part of learning, or what we introduce to them, that it's okay to make mistakes and learn from them.
So I've got two answers. So their parents, there's many different types of parents, many different jobs of a parent. My mother is an example of to say not technical, not technical. Let's just put the capital N on that. But still, you know, the library card trick was great. When I exhausted Radio Shack, she found me an electronics store in the neighboring city that had a bigger set of parts. She had to get her credit situation straightened out so she can get a credit card so that I could order parts from mail order. There was no internet back then, because I grew up store too. So the notion of even if she's not part of the play I was doing, trying to build robots and computers, she was supporting that, enabling that, and just being, you know, half a step ahead of where I was to get the next thing to show up. So that's half my answer. The other half of my answer is, on the list of joys of being a professor, is being taught by your students, right? The teachers just keep on getting younger. I think that's Jonathan Swift I just quoted. But I got very comfortable not knowing where my students were going and letting them lead me through some new area that they were interested in, this new idea, they solved the problem. And we go a few little ways and bump into a wall and back up and go some other direction and bump to a wall. And I'm just sitting back and watching all this bumping. I'm having a great time. And that was being content also to say, I don't know how to do that. Do you know how to do that? Why don't you go teach me how to do that? And being fine with flipping that I'm not the fount of knowledge. I'm sitting here in my office just 10 years ahead of you. So unless I've actually done this problem before, why don't you go solve this and tell me what you've done? And that, being student-led was really good. So getting parents then to be kid-led then would be great.
And to maybe share with them something that Reggio Emilia says, that every child is strong, rich, and powerful. And for parents to have that idea that your child is actually strong, rich, and powerful as opposed to needy or somehow not strong, rich, and powerful. So I think that's a point.
Yeah. All right, so I want to go to Q&A here in a moment, so start thinking about what questions you want to ask the panelists. I'm going to give you a heads up so you can think of really, really good questions. And while you're doing that, I'm going to ask them one last one, which is, there are some circles where people say that creative minds are just wired differently. Do you agree with that? I see James shaking his head. Or do you think they can be, taught, developed, and how does play a role in that?
I'll start. My grand advisor at Berkeley, I was in his Shankar Sastry, right? Giant and controlled theory. I was in his nonlinear control class, getting my butt just handed to me. And his quote was, "Math is like any other muscle. You just need to exercise it." And the same goes for creativity. It's just like anything else. You have to practice it. We have a user experience team at Google on my project, and they're just fantastic for getting all of us into the room and shaking us loose. And then once they've got us all well shook, then we start exploring ideas and how do we solve this problem? What even is the problem? So there, it can be learned.
I agree, and I think the wired part, it's not that you're born with it wired in a different way, but that the neuroplasticity of our brains is what wires it. Like it could be learned. So you learn the habits of minds. You learn it's okay to risk. You learn that some rules are made to be broken. You learn that there might be a way to do it, but maybe there's another way to do it. And the way that box said you should do it, there's another. Like, I wish the Lego people had finished the duck, because I wanted to see if anybody could make the things that should make a duck into something else. Like that, to me, that's wiring your brain differently. So if that's what that question means, I agree. If it's that you're born wired differently, I agree with you, and I disagree vigorously.
Some people are better.
Yes.
There's no doubt that there's diversity, but the fact that it's a binary, you got it or you don't.
Yes.
I agree, and the only one thing I think I've also seen is the who you work with, like people around you, have a huge influence in what you do. Like we've seen people who, like within our company itself, like one very creative person will just lift everyone else's creativity up as well. Like getting that mix is pretty key. I think in that context of collaborative social context, I think we've seen creativity rise much more. Whoever you are, it works.
Yeah. For me, it's experiences and opportunities. That as I said, you can't do what you haven't had an opportunity to do. And so, yes, it's like what we know about brain development and everything else, the more you do something, the better you get at it. So it's no different. So kids who have more opportunities, and particularly, for children who are, quotes, at risk, people often want to push them in the drill and kill kind of thing, and not to give them the more creative, open-ended opportunities, and they need just the opposite. So I think it's changing people who do assessment or who are deciding people's fate to think, if we want more creativity, then we have to give everybody more opportunity to really experience it.
All right, good questions out there. We've got a few. Dan has the mic, so he's going to come around. Yes, please.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank you all. It was great. The question is really for all of you, but I have to set context before I give the question. Sure. One of my passions is inclusion, and I'm a high school science teacher. And I want to kind of answer one of the things that was brought up. I include play in my class because I teach in an inner city school, and the students come to me with a lot of issues. And I'll get Legos and Connects and a lot of other things and have them build, and you can see the light start to come back on. I have to battle all those stupid handouts that the kids come to me with, and I got to tell them, no, look, create. So the light can come back on at high school level. And we know about the performance gaps widening with students of color, and the wealth gap continuing to widen. One of the issues is, as you touched on, about test prep. students who live in wealthier communities can afford to have test prep, to prep them for these tests that gets them a higher score and more money for college. So my question becomes, these tests are still done in an arcane manner, meaning it's only one right answer. And they're kind of still biased against students, of color and this, that, the other. So the ultimate question is, how can we, with standardized testing, have a significant component of play that can highlight the fact that all of these children that seem to be excluded have genius and creativity, but it's not being displayed with these standardized tests?
That is a $1 million question, yeah. Anyone?
So
Yeah.
yeah. So I'll start and then I'll stop because I don't know the answer to that. The problem with standardized tests is that we're not standardized people, and the thing with the reason that a PhD program is a apprenticeship where you are walking with your advisor through the whole thing. The reason why teachers show up in classrooms to begin with, right? It's not just a video. The reason why kids have parents is that there's always, there's never just one. There's always one. There's always at least two. It's not like I'm quoting from Star Wars. But the notion that we're going to come up with a standardized test that can do the right thing is, I don't think that's the right place to. That's not the right question. So then of course, how do you teach and learn and evaluate if everyone is different and everyone has to be instructed different? And the answer to that is yeah. Everyone is different. Everyone has to be taught different. Everyone needs interpersonal interactions. Everyone needs teaching. Everyone needs classrooms. I mean, it's just. So then, but then I'm not answering your question, right? So I don't know. I don't know how to fix this problem. I brushed up against it a few times trying to get robots into classrooms at various times, and you can probably talk about this too. You walk into this wall of here's the test, here's the state curriculum, here's the schedule. I have 35 minutes on this Thursday, 5 weeks from now, where I can do a robot activity, and I need you to have it structured so that it fits in 35 minutes.
15
Go. And play doesn't do that. Play spills out over the play doesn't color in the lines.
I wonder though, and you could say whether this answers your question or not, and I agree that I'm not sure the testing is the right way or it will ever happen, but to go back to Reggio Emilia, which I'm happy that you brought up, they have this idea that they say they put out provocations, so you had spoken about like the Legos and creating, but maybe for us as educators to be more reflective in what is it that we put out there, and then how do we kind of put them on the path so that they are beginning to learn the things they need for the standardized testing. And then as far as creativity is concerned, teach them prudence. We had whatever the standardized tests they do in the older grades, not my grade, praise God. But, and a lot of them miss this one particular question about what would you feed fish in the pond, I don't know. And they all went off on this thing, well, it depends on what kind of fish there are and how many there is. And like they all got it wrong because they were thinking outside the box. They were thinking about the particular fish they had as opposed to, but perhaps the idea is that we teach them prudence that, look, these standardized tests are not to see if you're creative and if you're a great thinker. They're simply there to see if you could answer what may be silly questions, but they just want to know the skill. So now is not the time to be creative. Now is the time to just take those things that we've learned by being creative and show a little prudence in that. I don't know if that helps, but that would be my thought with it.
But I think we need people like Google and others to come up with other ways of
Testing, yeah.
Because I think the assessment test is built with winners and losers. The issue is there's certain people who get all the information that they need and the support to do well on those things, and there are others that do not. Our education system is not equal by a long shot, but we're trying to get everybody to measure to one set of measures when we have not given all the equality around the inputs. So that the only people who get rich are the test creators. And so if we, so we need enough voices that rise up and say, this isn't authentic assessment. If we believe that people are different and learn differently, then we need to figure out how we value that.
Right.
And to find measures that make sense, because all we're doing is making teaching a miserable profession for people who love to teach. Children are learning more about failure than they are about learning and getting excitement. Because I go into schools and kids tell me what they didn't do well on and why they, I'm thinking, but so what do you love? And they look at you like you're crazy. What do you mean, what do I love? They're saying we're not doing well over here. We're sucking the life out and the creativity out of the very people that we need it in. So as adults, we have to figure out a way of pushing back against all of that testing, but to get some kind of authentic assessment that really does help to measure. So yes, we need to know what we're doing, but we need to know what we're doing for now and the future, not for what happened 100 years ago.
Good.
Yes, that's a standing ovation one.
All right, so let's go to another question. There was a woman toward the back here somewhere.
Hi. I had several questions, actually, based on all of this conversation. Thank you so much for all of you being here. I definitely want to know what your user experience team does in order to loosen everybody up and get things going for creative conversations. So that's definitely an answer I'd love. But we are here in a museum as well, and I personally produce films and interactives for museums, and something we struggle with a lot is, how do we pull the content that we need to educate the visitors with and children with, but combine it with the technology of interactive games to a point where we're not squelching the creativity, but still allowing for fun gameplay. And so we've talked a lot about school experiences, but I was wondering within the informal space, a lot of kids are spending time on their tablets or whatnot. How can we push that forward? How can we push that more beyond just sitting in screen time and, and get people out and about beyond the screens and to take what they're learning in these informal areas back into the schoolroom?
So my bias with the screen time to fix that is to connect the screen to something in the world. And that may be a place where the screen, you have to get to a place to experience that place. Pokemon Go is fantastic at this, right? All of a sudden, all these people who've never been outside
Running around, trying to find Pokemon.
wandering around the city, bumping into buildings that they didn't know existed. Me as a hardware engineer, I want to connect these screens to technology, digital technology in the world that can let you build fun stuff. Like I said, model train, that was fantastic. I got to bring my trains to work and play with trains at work, that's a good day. The other question about well, okay, let me do more on that. There's screen stuff that's good. So I love video games. I don't get to play them very much anymore, but some of them really get you into a place where you're playing. I spent a large chunk of my PhD avoidance phase playing a game called Homeworld, which, if you've ever heard of it, is a three-dimensional space tactical. You have these warships, and you zoom in and out, and they look like little dots, and you get right on in. And it was beautiful, and it was fun, and my wife would see it, and it got to the point where I would have to give it to her, and she would have to hide it from me in order to get work done. But that kept me in this. And I would always want to try new ways to win the game, new strategy, new techniques. So that kind of exploring in this game space can be fun. Some games are less fun, right? You're on this track, you're on these rails, and you're going down this path. There's no way off. The question about the UX team, the last thing we did, for example, we were experimenting with this vision kit. She sat down. This is Kirsten Clymer, or one of our kick-ass researchers, and she's like, okay, let's list everything with eyes. And cats and kittens and someone says potatoes. Well, okay, potatoes have eyes. That's great. So we wrote that down. And then we get to storms. Then we get to I can't even remember. But it just went way out of bounds. And then from that, now that you've gone way out of bounds, you've expanded what was on your mind. Now you're ready to make connections now to all the other things that you need to connect to make. To really find the right way to solve whatever problem we actually wanted to solve, which was, we've got this smart vision kit. What can we build? What can we put out there that's going to help people build fun stuff with it?
All right, I think one more question, and then we'll have me. Dan, do you want me to call, or you want to pick, or how do you want to do this?
Because I'm brave and I have 3 ticking time bombs, I get to go. Hi, my name is Barbara Larimore. If you live on Virginia, you might know me as Recess Mom. And we're in Virginia. We're very excited. They just passed legislation almost unanimously to allow localities to include more recess in the school day by taking time out of the core subjects, so not taking out of specials, which we also know is really important. But the localities is where we're at now in the process of trying to add more play in our day. And I'm struggling with school board members who are worried about testing, worried about tougher populations and how they're going to still get the scores and keep their schools good, and still introduce this. Have you guys found a way to get over that barrier, a talking point or a buzzword, anything to try to get through to people who aren't there yet? Maybe they're trying to get there, but they haven't quite got to understand this is necessary. Our kids need this for learning, for self, for emotional, social growth. Any words of wisdom to kind of get these last couple of school board members on my side?
One thing I would say is there is research out there about that. I mean, and Finland is a perfect example, although it is very different than what we're dealing with here, which some people may bring that back to you, that it's hugely different than the US. But you know, they have 15, for every hour, I think they have 15 minutes of play. But there is research, I think in the US, of different schools who have added, even if it's just a 5-minute block of time, how that has increased the children's ability to sit and to learn and to, you know, less problems in the classroom and things. So I think there's big voices out there that you might be able to use that they might respect, even though they shouldn't necessarily, but that they might respect more than yours.
And along with research is data. Like I think, if before rolling it out, if you can actually convince them to do it in one school and show the results in some ways, that doesn't, makes them feel convinced that it should be perfectly okay to do so. And I think in general, I feel like it's okay that the systems change a little slowly in education, because I think otherwise we'll just see a lot of thrash and churn. So it's okay to be a little slow and take a little bit more measured approach to it. But if you can bring data from anyone else has rolled it out and done that, make that change, that's always good to have.
And there are programs out there that are showing the relationship between learning and play, so play works. And then we're looking at a lot of the issue around social emotional growth and learning and supports, and understanding that learning how to play and get along through games, et cetera, do that. So sometimes it may start with the more structured time, but then to begin to pull back to get it to be that free play. But, as I said, I'd rather have something in there than nothing. And so most of our schools have bought into a PlayWorks model.
And to plug the genius of play wherever you are.
I was just going to say.
I don't know if I was on your website and looked at a lot of your things. I don't know if it was Recess in particular, but that's a great resource that they have it actually out for teachers, parents, and then specific things. So certainly give their website a look and see what you could find to share with the people you need to share it with.
So yeah, let me just put in a plug both for the geniusofplay.org, which is the Toy Association's site, and also Lemelson Center. Our website is invention.si.edu, and I think you'll find some interesting resources of various kinds about invention and some about play as well. If I may take just one moment, I just wanted to ask our audience, our panelists for the audience, if you had to give them one sort of pithy takeaway about this play-invention connection, what would it be?
It exists.
I think I would say what you said about Reggio Emilia, that kids are strong, rich, and powerful. And I think it's believe in those kids.
Yeah, I would just say make time for play. Just do it.
A master in the art of living draws no sharp distinction between work and play. So play hard.
And just one last thing, sorry, the one line that comes to my mind, it's a hashtag, I think, on Twitter, but kids deserve it and the world demands it. So, if we want to have a better world,
Then we got to do it.
There we go.
you got to let it happen.
That's great. Well, let's thank all the panelists for being here. Thank you.
That was really fantastic. So yeah, thank you guys so much. A couple things before you head out. So first off, we have some really special items brought out of collection storage and out of our archives. They're over here on these two tables. I really encourage you to take a few minutes and look at them. One of the things Smithsonian does when it collects things is it makes a promise to perpetuity. And part of how we can preserve the promise to perpetuity is that we don't bring food or drinks over there. But we really encourage you, take a look, talk to the curators.
Eat
There's
over
some
there.
really cool,
Eat over there.
fantastic
Yeah,
items
that's awesome.
that by virtue of coming here tonight, you get to see that the general public doesn't usually. I also encourage you on the opposite side, pop into Spark Lab, try a hands-on activity, check out what we do, but also have a drink, grab some food, interact, enjoy, and have a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.